One of the more fun events on the PGA Tour calendar is coming up this weekend is the Waste Management Phoenix Open. We got rowdy crowds. We got people shotgunning beers during putts. It's going to be a delight. We're going to break things down from a PGA DFS perspective, let you know our favorite golfers for this week and our general thoughts on this week's event based on the salaries over at FanDuel.com. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, joined here as always by Brandon Gadula. He is the managing editor of numberFire.com. And Brandon, I'm delighted you are here today because you're probably going to quit within the next 5 minutes. So I'm glad you're here now. How are you doing today?
Why am I going to quit?
Because I'm going to embarrass you. Not in like, I'm going to embarrass this guy way. But so I went through our player picks from last week. And here are the finishes of the guys you recommended. Patrick Henley, 4th. Seamus Power, 9th. Tom Hoagie got himself a little trophy. Joel Damon, 6th. Pat Perez, 9th. And then Alex Smalley missed the cut. But 5 out of the 6 dudes in your player picks from last week were top 10. I had a good head-to-head lineup. My bobble hat lineup was good. You took a Boba Fett flamethrower to it and obliterated me. And although I am upset that this happened because I'd like to win the bobble hat because I lost last year, I think. No, I won. Yeah, I won the bobble hat. I lost the other one. I'd like to win the bobble hat. I am happy for you for building a good lineup and having good player picks. So I'm conflicted, yet I'm here to give you the adulation you would not give yourself. So that's why you're going to quit, because you're probably just going to be embarrassed that I said good things about you.
Well, thank you. Unfortunately, I thought for most of the weekend that Seamus Power was going to get
it was going to be double
win.
bad. Yeah, because like you were going to obliterate me in the bobble hat. My guy who I had like talked up and made my player pick like 16 times was going to win, and I wasn't going to be on him, and you were going to be on him. So that would have made it a lot worse. And if that had happened, I might have quit. So I guess like at least there's that consolation for me.
Yeah, I mean, look, Pebble is... Look, we saw a lot of non-professional golf, and I get the point of it, but Pebble's always got like this weird sort of... I actually usually perform, because I hit Daniel Berger last year here. I feel like going into it, I don't have the best read, but I feel like maybe this is actually one of my better events. Yeah. Probably helps like with the course rotation, the 54-hole cut, stuff like that. Somehow a little bit less volatile because you get more guaranteed holes, but also way more volatile because the scoring is low. So I mean, look, I appreciate it. Hopefully, someone out there had some good lineups based on both of our picks last week.
Yeah, good week last week, which means we have to run it back this week with the Waste Management Phoenix Open, of course, the rowdiest PGA Tour event. Fans fully back for this year as well. Not only that, but also sports betting is live in Arizona. So we've got an extra layer going on out there. We'll break down the Waste Management Phoenix Open from a DFS perspective, get you set for that in just 1 second. But first, the 2021 NFL season coming to an end as the Los Angeles Rams take on the Cincinnati Bengals in SoFi Stadium. FanDuel is giving you a chance to get in on the action with a massive daily fantasy contest. There are over $3 million worth of prizes to be had. And all you have to do, head to FanDuel.com and create your daily fantasy lineups comprised of players from the Bengals and the Rams. You can sit back, watch your players compete, and win more with FanDuel. Eligibility restrictions apply. Go to FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app for more details. We, of course, will have our breakdown of the Super Bowl from a single game perspective coming up on Thursday. That is at 10 a.m. on the FanDuel YouTube page. Brandon and I will also be live on Friday at 4 with Jessica Gridiron breaking down our thoughts on some props for Super Bowl 56, doing our game one more time. I went 3 for 3 during the conference championships, so I got you back there at least.
I'm not giving you any props. We don't do props on this show anymore.
I think the bobble hat was actually just payback for that, so there is that. We will also have a live edition of Covering the Spread, our betting show, Wednesday at 6 p.m. with our old pal JJ Zachariason. He'll be there. Dr. Ed Feng, of course, my co-host over at Covering the Spread, and Ryan Williams breaking down our favorite props and our overall betting thoughts on Super Bowl 56. So we are live on the FanDuel YouTube page Wednesday at 6 p.m., Thursday at 10 a.m., Friday at 4 p.m. to get you set for everything you need to know for Super Bowl 56. And of course, make sure you are subscribed to Covering the Spread for the betting side of things, but also to the numberFire daily fantasy podcast feed for PGA, NASCAR, NFL, UFC, NBA, NHL is back now too from their All-Star break. So a lot of good stuff to make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire daily fantasy podcast feed. All right, let's break down TPC Scottsdale, the stadium course. It is 7,261 yards and a par 71. There are 132 golfers in the field. The top 65 plus ties make the cut after the first two rounds. I'm glad it's back to 65 because I had Aaron Rye at 60, tied for 64th last week. Didn't matter. We were at an Airbnb and I was in a hot tub and I kept checking my phone to see if he was going to, because he needed a par on 18 to make the cut. And he bogeyed it. And I'm glad I had the hot tub because otherwise I'd have been distraught. So glad we're back to 65 for this week out of TPC Scottsdale. Thank goodness that top 60 thing did actually make a big difference. And I was very sad. Anyway.
Yeah, a hot tub can get you through a lot.
It was necessary. I'll say that. That's for sure. If it were not there, it would have been a rough day, man. Rough day for sure. Brandon, we have a lot of data on TPC Scottsdale. We know the weird intricacies from the fan perspective, but also interesting course in general if you disregard that. So what do you know about TPC Scottsdale and what does it tell us for our key stats for this week?
Yeah, so the average green size here is a nice 7,069 square feet on average, which is about 120% of the PGA Tour average. But even though we have large greens, they tend to play firm. So we're not going to see just the darts thrown that we've seen over the swing season. And those greens are over Cedar Bermuda, so they're not going to play like true Bermuda really. So for this week, I'm actually looking just at overall putting rather than Bermuda putting. That's the way that I want to play it. About average in terms of green speed on the stimp. We haven't been getting stimp meter readings for the past few weeks, which is bothersome to me. But, they're going to play average. But actually, one thing that we should note is that Data Golf shows that this is a pretty easy place to putt. They have this tool now where it shows the difficulty of picking up strokes gained based on the course, and this is one of the easier places to putt. So that's going to kind of bring some of our old heat check favorites into play for me this week.
They're in play, baby. They are in play.
Because with the easy putting, the low scores, the past 5 winning scores have been all at least 17 under. Past 5 cut lines, all at least 1 under. We're going to need birdies. We don't need as much putting. We need ball striking. That is basically, the heat check green light for us. So, that's kind of what I'm leaning toward this week. And one thing I will note before I list off all my key stats is that once again, Data Golf has a tool for this because they have a tool for just about everything. Course history here is very predictive. So golfers who play well here typically play well here, year to year. This course trails only Waialae and Augusta in terms of predictiveness. So this is actually one of the few weeks where I'm going to be using course history as one of my key stats. That will be last, but that is something to note. Patrick Henley has not played here before. I think with the altitude, with the crowds, with the greens playing the way that they do, that gives some credence to having course history be a key stat. So my key stats for this week are going to be strokes gained approach, strokes gained off the tee, par 5 scoring, birdie or better rate, and some course history sprinkled in there.
It also does make sense too. I mean, like you look at the where guys have finished recently, and like you can see there's typically a lot of overlap, and like guys who do well tend to do well consistently, and it's not always like studs. Like Bubba Watson, I think is probably going to be like one of the main guys who comes up in that discussion. We'll talk about him in the course history section, but like it does take a different kind of mindset to feast here than it would at, a place like the Farmers and stuff like that. So I think it's very interesting. that course history matters a bit more this week. I'm not going to cross off guys who have not played here, et cetera, especially if I'm like okay with like their general mindset and stuff like that. But it is worth keeping in mind that it's a pretty serious deviation from where we're usually at. So with that said, let's dive into that course history and talk about guys who have done well here in the past, including last year's winner, Brooks Koepka, $11,200. He rallied from coming behind on Sunday to win that event last year. Koepka is always volatile, always kind of tough to read. It does seem like, though, his kind of event. So let's have Brooks Koepka here at 11-2 and what you see with him in the past year at TPC Scottsdale.
Yeah, so if you're a 2-10 winner, you're probably getting talked up in past history, and that's almost always the true when you're the defending champ. And when it's at a course again, which is one of the more predictive in terms of past history, I mean, we just had to talk Brooks here. Koepka won here in 2015 as well, in addition to his win last year. And he returned to Phoenix last year. He hadn't played here since 2017, but came back and won. So it was a comeback in multiple ways there. In between his victories, he made both cuts while finishing outside the top 40. So he's either been, winning or outside the top 40, but still making the cut. And one thing that I'm trying to track, which is always hard to track, is like motivation levels. Koepka, like a motivated Koepka is a different Brooks Koepka, and he made it pretty clear this offseason, or this swing season, I should say. There's really no offseason, that he's been focused on his game, that he's like, he hasn't even begun to peak. And when he does peak, all of Philadelphia will know. But, Koepka, it's an Always Sunny joke. Koepka most recently, though, missed the cut at the Farmers. He was 28th at the Tournament of Champions in a field of 38. He was 9th out of 20 at the Hero World Challenge. The recent form doesn't really fit with the fact that he said he's, locked in, that we're going to see the best from him. All we've really seen from Brooks in 2022 so far is a dye job and a haircut. But
you sometimes wish we had not seen that.
Yeah.
You express yourself, Brooks. Do whatever you need. But
look, there's a lot of money for grabs for being talked about, and I think that maybe that has something to do with it.
That was the first thing that came to my mind. Yeah.
I was like, good for Brooks. If he just wants to have the blonde hair and the buzz cut, that's good for Brooks too. It's not a judgment. My hair is getting very long as we speak, but like the bigger point.
If I had it.
The bigger point is like, I'm not seeing enough to make like Brooks a strong priority despite the 2 wins. So where are you with Brooks this week?
Well, I think that if you look back at let's look back at other events where he conceivably could have had motivation, because he has not gained more than 3 strokes total on the field since the Open. And obviously motivation was high there. But since then, if I'm looking for an event that may have been predictive in terms of okay, he'll definitely try here, I'm not really seeing one. Like the Shriners, he typically has tried pretty hard at because of the nature of that event. He was at -4 strokes gained total in that event, did gain 1.4 off the tee, but lost 1.9 approach. So even in events where he conceivably could have had motivation, he was trying to make, the get advanced in the FedEx Cup playoffs, couldn't quite do that. Even in events where he had motivation, the output wasn't really there. So I'm still a bit wary. And I know that there's that fear of okay, he could burn me. But I think I'm okay with that, just because even in spots where I would, if I were marking down just a binary, yes or no motivation for Brooks, I would have put yes. It was the scoring and the performance wasn't there. I think that's what kind of keeps me lower on him personally, is that worry that he hasn't done well in events where I would have expected him to try pretty hard.
Yeah, and I think that if we're going to play, and I did this strategically, there's another golfer with multiple wins at TPC Scottsdale at a somewhat similar salary with a lot fewer question marks, and that's Hideki. I don't think even game theory would get me to put Brooks over Hideki for this week. So, Hideki might be chalky, but we have John Rahm, we have JT, Cantlay, Hovland, who's golfing well. I can't imagine that Brooks is the best play, despite, we're going to get some other studs with lower popularity numbers than they should have.
Yeah.
I'm probably just going to be out on Brooks. I'd rather bet, as always, I would rather bet Brooks than play him in a DFS lineup.
Yep, I think that that's the right way to play things here. Okay, let's talk about Bubba Watson. He seems to just love this course, and he has for a very long time. This will be the 13th time Bubba has played this event, and 4 of those previous trips have been top 5 finishes. And importantly, some of those were recent. He was 4th in 2019, 3rd in 2020. He gained 11.2 and 7.3 strokes tee to green in those events. Last year, Bubba finished 22nd, but he gained 5.2 tee to green. This gave some back on the greens, which is not necessarily unexpected, I guess. Bubba had a super long layoff. He hadn't played at all since the Northern Trust before last week, came back for the Saudi International and finished second. So that alleviates the form concern because he did play well there against a very tough field. But now traveling, a lot of travel here for Bubba. He's 10-2. Where are you at with him this week, given that we do want to bump up the value of course history, and he's been very, very good at this course in the past?
Yeah, so he's mostly, well, I won't say mostly, but the primary factor that gets me in on Bubba is the course history.
Mhm.
But outside of that, it's really not egregious. The driving's there, and even though the other 3 stats and strokes gained are below average, they're not abysmal. And really, Bubba Watson and Brooks Koepka are the 2 golfers who come to mind.
Yep.
For whom I rule out data. And it comes down to course fit or motivation or anything like that. So for me, even though we can nitpick Bubba from a statistical standpoint right now, it's Bubba's got his specific style of play. And if he is going to be able to go to a course where he's comfortable and play his style, that's really appealing. So I think that Bubba is very much in play at 10-2, which opens up a larger conversation of roster construction, which we can get to throughout the show. Because, spoiler alert, we have Jon Rahm in the field at 12-1, and Jon Rahm, very good, but also has good history at this course. So
correct.
He's going to be in a lot of my lineups, let's say. That makes
bold
it,
of you to do that.
It's going to be it's going to be like a difficult conversation from there. Is do you take value in a really top heavy field, or do you try to play Rahm with some balance there? In a balanced lineup, someone like Bubba or Corey Connors is really appealing. But if you're trying to jam in Rahm and any number like Rahm and Hideki, which would be an awesome start, I don't know if the value is quite there to bank on this week. So I think that is always going to be surrounding Bubba for me with the conversation. But I do think that Bubba, I'm going to rule out the recent stats and feel pretty good with him in a vacuum.
Where are you out on him relative to what I think is a pretty good tier in that like low 10,000 range? Because we do have our boy, our darling son, Seamus. Seamus Powers at 10.5. We have Matt Fitzpatrick coming off a 6th place finish last week. He's 10.4. We got Abraham Answer, Abe the Babe, is 10.3. We have Corey Connors at 10.1. You alluded to him. Taylor Gooch is 10,000. It's a ball striking course, which kind of says just go Corey Connors and don't look back. Where does Bubba grade out relative to those guys after you toss out the stats and embrace the fact that he could do well here?
So he's going to be second for me, or sorry, at least, sorry. Connors is going to be first. So yeah, I was going to say second at best because Connors is the guy who jumps out to me. I would even throw Russell Henley in there at 99. We went ball striking. He's got that. Seamus, and then probably Bubba.
Yeah, I would have a very hard time ranking Bubba ahead of either Connors or Seamus. Fitzpatrick, I could be okay putting Bubba above him just because ball striking's not like his forte necessarily. So I think for this event, I go Bubba over Fitzpatrick, but I think we're on the same page there where Connors and Power kind of the standouts in that range. And I think that does influence the way we may want to build rosters. We'll talk about it later on. But first, let's talk about Ricky Fowler. He's $9,500. Fowler has played well here in the past, but we also know the recent stuff is tricky. So talk me through Ricky Fowler and the complexities in trying to analyze him right now.
Yeah, so he's flashed recently at times, but if you go back through the event log, it's mostly missed cuts. And I like to look past missed cuts and look at the strokes gain data. But You still don't want to see missed cuts ever, because that is one of the unquantifiable things that we can talk about with, if a golfer is missing cuts but has good data, does he really know that he's got the good data? Because he's just
you
seeing
may
that he
tweak
missed
when
the
you
cut.
may not need to.
That, or just, confidence. Like you
Yeah.
can lose confidence in a golf swing, anything like that. But in 2022, he missed the cut at the Farmers and the American Express, which did come from lost strokes putting, which is actually a lot more typical of Ricky Fowler now than it has been historically. His putting has actually gotten worse, which is definitely noteworthy. Probably as he's working on his swing, trying to get the ball striking back, the putting seems to be lagging a bit. But historically, he's played well at TPC Scottsdale. Probably again, and there's a lot of subjectiveness to this week. Probably feeds off the crowd because he's a fan favorite. Won here in 2019 after finishing 11th, 4th, and 2nd. In the past 2 years, though, he's 37th and missed the cut. But he has gained with his irons in 7 straight events. Almost always putts well on these particular greens. So really, the short game has been elusive for Ricky, and that's led to a lot of bad results. The irons are there, though. Are you tempted by the Rick for a salary of $9,500?
I think the tough part for me is I can get the upside of Ricky, which is course history, without using him in this range. Like Max Homa is $9,500. He has better ball striking data, also has done well at this course. I can get behind that. Luke List has not been like amazing here, but he's had some decent results, has much better ball striking. Like, I feel like I can get the upsides of Ricky without using Ricky via other guys in this range. So I feel like I would need to be in this range a lot to use Fowler, and I don't think I want to be in this range a lot. Like, I think I want to be in like the value range or be above him more often than I'm actually at Ricky. And if I'm in this range, I'm going to Luke List every time. So I think that's the hang up for me, is even if I like if I take away the names and just look for areas I can get positives, I can get the same positive for Ricky without the downsides, I guess, is kind of my hang up here.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rank him at least behind List and Homa specifically. Might even at the salary rank him behind Joel Damon and use that savings to get up a little bit. So I'm probably not getting to Ricky, who I haven't tracked his popularity numbers like I used to. But with the course history being what it is, with there being some glimmers, I think he'll be pretty popular in this range. So I'm probably out on Ricky, all things considered, because like you said, probably not going to be in this range a ton. Although I don't know what we're defining as value, because I'm probably going to try to build my head-to-head lineup against you without anyone in the 8,000 range.
Okay, 8,000 range at all.
Maybe Aaron Wise.
No, Aaron Wise is the first guy you put in the Bobby lineup.
Just
letting you know.
Over John Rahm.
Well, yeah, if I'm considering salary, which I have to, I mean, Aaron Wise at $1,300 under salaried, or John Rahm. I mean, it's just an easy equation for me. I don't know.
I got
that
you,
John Rahm guy. Yeah. Let's talk here about Gary Woodland. He is 9,000, former winner TPC Scottsdale. The win for Woodland came back in 2018. Gained 11.7 strokes tee to green and 7.6 in approach. Since then, he has been 7th, 40th, and then missed cut last year. Woodland, looking recently, is pretty mixed. He has missed 4 out of 6 cuts since the start of the swing season, but he was close to the number on a lot of those. He was 9th at the CJ Cup in one of the events he did. Well, I guess there was no cut there, but he gained 2.8 in approach across 3 measured rounds at the Farmers. He lost 1.1 off the tee and 3 around the green. So Woodland is flawed, but he has a good history. Not the worst form on the planet at $9,000. Is there enough there for you to consider Gary Woodland from the course history narrative here?
Would you consider someone in my loves as someone that I would like?
Is he in your loves? I have not looked.
See,
I fill out my stuff and then don't go back to your loves again until we're actually going through the loves.
Yeah, because I was fill mine in at the last second. But So part of the reason that I'm trying to
Sorry, I scrolled down now and I saw that we have an overlap for a person I wasn't expecting to overlap on. This is great. I didn't think you'd be on Sam Burns as much as I am, so I'm very happy.
I think the salary's a bit low.
Okay, good.
And he fits well. Well, he fits well with Rom relative to.
I called dibs on him, making him a win pick. By the way,
I think whoever wins the head-to-head gets to decide that. But
no. We can overlap.
We can. I know. It's a change. It's working out because usually I'd have to pivot all over the place on this week. But yeah, I mean, for Woodland, I'll talk more about him later. But you're banking on a return to form at a course where he's familiar and has played well. And like you said, there are glimmers, right? Yeah. It's not flawless, but you take someone like that, put him in a course where he's done well. I think there's a lot to like. Again, what I was initially going to say is it depends on how you define the value, because I really don't want to go much lower than Aaron Wise this week. I just don't feel confident in any of these options because we got a pretty tough cut with a lot of golfers who should probably make the cut at the top. Doesn't leave a whole lot. So the probability of rostering someone like an Emiliano Grillo is at 8,000. He's going to open up a lot, but these cut probabilities go down a ton, and that really affects your lineup. So
yeah, I think Woodland, if we're going to play the course history narrative and bump up guys, I would say Woodland is the guy I'm most receptive to rostering, in part based on his course history, followed by Bubba, number 2. I'd say those are the two guys I bump up most considerably, in part because Hideki's kind of in a good range that I like a lot, and I might not be in that range a whole lot. So I think that's kind of why, for me, the guys, if we're talking about course history, guys I'm most likely to use as a result of that for me would be Woodland 1, Bubba 2.
I'm cool with that.
Okay, cool. So speaking of Hideki, let's move down to current form, because not only is Hideki a 2-time winner at this event, he's been playing pretty well recently. So Hideki Matsuyama, $11,500. What are you seeing with him both recently and at this event?
What am I not seeing with him is probably the better question, right?
Bad play, man. You're not seeing bad play.
There you go.
There we go.
Yeah. So look, I talked about Brooks in event form or course form, because the current form conversation is definitely there for Hideki, so I figured I'd just go this route. But Matsuyama has won 2 of his past 4 starts. He won the Zozo and the Sony Open. He was 30th at the Farmers when he lost strokes putting, 12th at the Tournament of Champions when he lost strokes putting. His putting still can be an issue at times, but the ball striking is there. He said that he's playing freer now that he's gotten the wins. And he once he won the Masters, he basically was like,
problem is that gives credence to people are like, oh, this guy doesn't have winning mentality. I'm like, shh, let's not don't feed the trolls.
Wait, how does that work?
I don't know. I just get mad when they apply to people I like. That's what.
It is hard to win.
I know
a golf tournament.
I know, but I want people to be gentle to Tony Finau mostly. Be gentle, my boy.
So Matsuyama historically putts fine at TPC Scottsdale. He really stripes the irons down. That's what you expect. He's averaged 1.4 strokes from approach per round at this course, which is phenomenal. I love Hideki this week. I have nothing bad to say about him. The issue is just, can I play Hideki in lineups with Rom, or am I going to have not enough salary for 4 more golfers? I'm kind of leaning toward not being able to do this, and that's why Sam Burns has a lot more appeal, because that 700 goes a long way. So what are your thoughts? I agree
with that. And that's part of the issue that I have here. Is another thing is Hideki would probably not be the first guy I'd go to if I were in this range. We can talk about that in a second. Versus Cantlay?
Yeah, I'll take that.
Really?
Yeah.
Surprised by this. Why?
Cantlay's never played here.
Okay.
He could not convert last week, which is not something I usually say. But when you combine the fact that Hideki's playing the way that he is, and that Cantlay's not played in this environment, I think that I think that it's basically underrating what Hideki's doing and now entering a very comfortable situation for him. So I would take that head-to-head FanDuel points.
Okay, so
Which
I
is
can't
usually a curse because you always beat me in the head-to-head. So
it's the only place I can beat you. But yeah, okay. So I have Cantlay, you have Hideki. I'll take that. Let's talk about Jordan Spieth. Because the current form very noteworthy here. We talked about him in a negative sense in the current form section like 2 weeks ago, and it was justified because he had been struggling. He had gone back to losing strokes in both the ball striking categories, and it made him super tough to trust. I did use him over Zalatoris once, and I regretted that. But then he went bananas at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am. He rallied over the weekend. He wound up finishing second behind Tom Hoge in the 2 measured rounds for Spieth at Pebble Beach. He gained 5.8 strokes in approach and 1.3 off the tee. That is awesome and puts him back in the conversation, especially because last year at the Waste Management, Spieth finished 4th. He actually was in worse form then than he's in right now. So we do have the course history narrative here. We did see him perk up in the current form discussion last week. Is that enough for you to be interested in Spieth, or does the presence of Hideki here, the presence of Cantlay, make it where you are okay not speculating on a guy who does have bad play in the very recent past?
It's one of those situations where I don't have really anything against Spieth. It's just I would rather play other options this week. Looking at things more, I should not have taken the Hideki Cantlay bet. I was just on a Hideki roll. But, what are you going to do?
Were you on a high decky?
Yeah, for sure. Now, with Spieth, look, he's getting close. We're seeing good iron play from him. Over the past year, my data, which accounts for field strength and recency, so it weights your recent rounds more than rounds a year ago, I'm in the 73rd percentile in this field with the irons, but 67th off the tee. And if you look at things off the tee, that's usually where if you're backing Spieth, whether in DFS or from betting standpoint, when he's got driver in his hand, that's whenever you're really worried. But it still has been pretty good. So you gotta like that. So again, I can't really talk anyone out of Spieth. I'm just gonna look to Hideki, Cantlay. I want to say Daniel Berger, but he withdrew with a back injury last week, and I liked him last week. I would like him this week if I knew he was healthy. But Spieth, I think, is by default going to be like 3rd in the 11,000 range, and I can't build around 3 $11,000 golfers because I still got to get to Rahm.
Where would you go Spieth relative to Xander Schauffele at 11.4? Similar to Bubba, where he has a travel issue in his range of like considerations, but he's 11.4. Would you put Schauffele above Spieth, or does it not matter because you're not going to be here enough for it to care?
It doesn't particularly matter. Xander's been a little bit better here. Now these two guys actually last year, I think they were the final pairing, if I'm not mistaken. I try my best to remember things like this, but
Pat Mayo in terms of just recalling random golf events from past years.
No, I move on to the next thing. I can't dwell on stuff. I just don't have a good memory for stuff like that. But to really answer your question, it's not going to matter. Mm-hmm. But I think I'd probably go with Spieth over Xander this week.
I'd probably go Xander, but it's not by a wide margin, and I think that they're both behind Hideki and Cantlay for me. So let's move to some lower salary guys who are interesting. Denny McCarthy is 8.6. Now, Brandon, I was kind of surprised to see him on this list because we're like, hey, it's all about the ball striking this week, and then you drop a Denny McCarthy on me. So talk me through this. Is there enough here for us to actually like McCarthy, or is that an obligation?
Well, I mean, if you're looking for value golfers in a field as deep as this, it's not the best field we've ever had, but it's a pretty strong field. If you're looking for value golfers with good form, sometimes you're limited. McCarthy does fit though. And if you look at the leaderboard last week, not a whole lot of great names, but he was T12. And he did so as expected with poor iron play and good putting, but was across just 2 shot length rounds at Pebble. At the American Express, he rode the putter once again to a T6 finish. If you want someone who's going to pick up a ton of shots with his irons, you got to look elsewhere. But this is who Denny McCarthy is. he knows how to play his game, and playing that same game is getting him into good position. So I think that there's some appeal there. These are large greens. I know that we're still prioritizing ball striking, but overall, I think that there's appeal for McCarthy at 86. There would be more appeal if I felt like I needed to, if there was more upside from any golfer in the 8,000 range, and I feel like it's just Aaron Wise.
Yeah.
McCarthy has 6 top 17 finishes and 10 starts this season. Like, I don't really, I don't want to discount him, but I'm having a hard time. And it's not just McCarthy. It's not just that he's a putter and not a ball striker. It's hard to find an upside from anyone in this range. So that's where I am with McCarthy. And presumably I didn't sell you on him either.
Yeah, so I would say like this. Like, we talk about archetypes we want to target at certain courses. Those are tweaks from the baseline. The baseline should always be who is the best golfer. And like, your numbers measure that by looking at strokes gained relative to the field. Doesn't matter how you get there, it just matters if you get there. Like, if we're talking about, okay, we're selling up for ball striking, that means we're tweaking things X%. X is not 100%. We are not looking exclusively for ball strikers. We want the best golfers while we weight more heavily towards ball striking than we usually may. I think that's an important caveat to say, where like we shouldn't cross off someone like Denny McCarthy, who is objectively is a good golfer no matter how he gets there. I just think that I can get to different dudes down there who may fit better and are not like totally off the rails in other areas. So Troy Merritt. I like Troy Merritt. I think he's kind of interesting. He is 86, I think, the exact same salary, I believe, as McCarthy.
He is.
I could potentially go there. I can bump up for some other guys who are going to get me some birdies in other fashions, maybe more predictive fashions. So on the whole, someone like Denny McCarthy is a good option for this week because he's a good golfer who gets the job done regardless of how he does it. And I want to make that point very clear. I just don't think that's quite enough to overcome some other guys in this range. So on the whole, the thought process is correct, and I'm glad that you brought him up. But I think for this specific week, I've got some other guys I like too.
Yeah, I agree. I am going to limit my exposure to golfers with an 8 in front of their salary, as I mentioned. But as always, in my helper on numberFire.com, which you can check out. It's a website. I do have 5 golfers in this range just because that's how I structure the piece. McCarthy's not one of them, but I think he's in the conversation. So it's just, again, it comes down to what you're looking for. If you think that this week you got to have Cantlay, you got to have Rahm and Hideki or something like that, and you're just going to rotate in some values, I wouldn't cross off McCarthy.
I agree. If you are down there enough, he's in that consideration. I just don't want to be down there too much. I think that's the right way to phrase things there. Okay, let's get out the drool buckets. Talk about Luke List in the current form section because our boy is back, coming off a victory. He is just 13,600. Oh, sorry, 9,600. I read it wrong because I assumed he'd be properly salaried. Sorry. $9,600 for Luke List. He is, of course, as you hopefully know, coming off a win at the Farmers, gained 3.7 strokes putting across the 3 measured rounds. Probably not going to happen again. Might be an outlier. Who can say? But List did gain 7.4 strokes tee to green that week, gained 5.4 in approach, again across 3 measured rounds. And it puts List up to 7th in strokes gained off the tee, 19th in approach across the past 50 rounds, according to Fantasy National. He is also 4th in birdies or better gained, and that does include his hideous putting. That does not account for the fact that he could have the bottom fall out and go, get a triple bogey. But like, he can get birdies, and we want birdies for a DFS. So the putting's probably not going to be great, but I am right back on him again at $9,600 this week. What about you with Luke List?
I love him. He's one of my loves. I can talk more about him later or now.
Are we getting overconfident? That's the one question I have.
So, no, because the salary is still low.
Okay.
It's still reasonable. The ball striking is very, very good. And these are easy to putt on greens. I will say Aaron Wise lost 10.2 strokes putting here last year in 4 rounds. Ryan Moore
Oh,
in 2
no.
rounds lost 7.6. So it is possible.
Aaron Unwise for my future adoration.
So it's possible that, as you said, the bottom can fall out. But if he's baseline with the putter on these easy to putt on greens, he's done well here in the past. I don't really think that we talk ourselves out of Luke List. It just comes down to I might only be able to roster guys at like 91, 92, and 400. I don't have 400. Like, it sounds like I'd rather get up to Luke List than someone at 91, but it's really hard to do this week if you're prioritizing John Rahm, Cantlay, Hideki.
I think that like the thought process you have to go through is like the 2v2s where you're going like Luke List and like Troy Merritt, Denny McCarthy versus Joel Damon, Gary Woodland. I don't know if that works out, but like somewhere around there, are you okay dipping down that $400 and taking on the increased risk? Like, is Luke List worth that much more than Joel Damon? I say yes, not out of disrespect to Damon, who I love, but because I think List is pretty freaking good. So I think it's worth it. It will be a tough decision for sure. I think I'm a bit higher on the 8,000 range than you may be, but that's kind of where I'm at there with Luke List. And we'll talk more about him in the player picks. But first, let's get to Bookmaker Odds for this event. John Rahm is a favorite. Shocker. He's plus 750 at FanDuel Sportsbook. Dips down to Justin Thomas, who had 12-1. Victor Hovland and Patrick Cantlay are 14-1. Hideki Matsuyama and Jordan Spieth check in at 16-1. Xander Schauffele is 20-1 before a teardrop. After Schauffele, you get to Brooks Koepka, Scotty Scheffler, and Daniel Berger, rounding at the top group at 27-1. So we talked through some of the studs, but not John Rahm. So let's have the Rahm discussion now. What are you doing with John Rahm for cash games? And then what are you doing with John Rahm for tournaments?
Lock him in for cash games. Be overweight in tournaments. Same thing with Rahm as usual. He's like 11% likely, not even like 10.5% likely to miss the cut.
Are his win odds?
His win odds are, what do I have him at? I think 10.5%.
They're almost higher than his odds to miss the cut.
Basically. 10.4 and 10.2 to miss. So, yeah. That might sound silly, but the consistency's there. He's that much better than the rest of the field, and he plays well here. So I think that, look, you can fade. Like, fading the chalk in a sport as volatile as golf should make sense. But with Rahm, it doesn't, because his game is so good in every area that he's not like a JT where he might put himself out of contention. He's going to be lingering. And I think that you just play Rahm in cash games and that you try to be overweight on him in tournaments.
I think that's kind of the way to play things for me as well. Probably 60-ish% Rahm for me. And
by overweight, we mean if you're playing 10 lineups and you think he'll be rostered overall in 40%, and you play him on 60% of your lineups, you're overweight relative to the field.
I would also say 40% is probably the better projection in terms of roster rate this week. Usually I'll say like 40 to 44 or 43. I think 40 is probably more appropriate this week just because of the field's pretty good.
Yeah.
So like if you're at 60, probably okay. If I'm not going Rahm, I would probably go Cantlay, or the other option is hyper balanced. Where I just skip over like the 11,000 range entirely and start with like Burns and load up on like that good 10,000 range. Because if I'm not using Rahm, I kind of am interested in having just a totally different roster construction entirely. That's why I consider that. But I think that I would probably just go Cantlay first if I'm not going Rahm personally.
Yeah. I'm probably being too low on Cantlay because he hasn't played here before.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I have a similar demeanor to Patrick Cantlay, but I would like to think that I do. He seems very reserved, and I don't think I would do well in this environment. So again, I'm just looking for anything that I can, and that's the only nitpick you can have with Cantlay. So,
okay, yeah, that's fair. Okay, which golfers' odds have shifted most since things opened yesterday?
Also, I'm not comparing myself to Cantlay at all because he's a world-class athlete and doesn't really like struggle with
You play in a pickup basketball league, you know, that's kind of the same thing, right? Being
that is true. Yeah. And
you
I could
golf.
take, yeah, with,
Yeah.
solo rounds.
You've made a par before. You're the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I'm just saying, like, I get a similar vibe. I don't know if like that energy is going to be better for him than like some of these lower
because like you maybe
energy
you can, like,
rounds.
ignore it or like drown out the stuff.
Like he can do that way better than I can. But like when
Yeah.
he steps up to the gallery tee, I don't know if that's gonna like he'll probably like ace that twice this weekend, but whatever. So would you ask me who other than Rom do I like?
Odds movement.
Oh, odds movement. Cantlay. Let's
There
talk
we
about
go.
him. Haven't talked about him in a while. Patrick Cantlay from 16 to 14. So my worries are not shared by the public, apparently. Scotty Scheffler, 29 to 27. Daniel Berger, 31 to 27. So I guess, again, my worries about his back, not shared by the public. Corey Connors, 50 to 41. So my love for Corey Connors is shared with the public. Keith Mitchell, 90 to 70. And Aaron Wise, 100 to 80.
Are we overlooking Scheffler? He is right beneath that, like the Spieth, Hideki, Cantlay range. He's 11,000. Obviously, make some birdies. Obviously, good ball striking. Where are you at on Scheffler?
I like him.
Uh-huh.
I want to like him. It's a matter of we can get some similar players with also good form at this course. Like I'm stressing the difference of like a few hundred between one golfer and the next, but Scheffler versus Brooks.
Yeah,
I think I'm taking Brooks there. Scheffler versus Finau. Maybe Finau. Scheffler versus Burns. I'm going Burns, very often there.
Mm-hmm.
And a name I haven't mentioned and actually won't, I guess, because he's not one of my loves. I like Webb Simpson this week at 10-7.
Yeah, Webb is a former winner here. Great ball striker. I mean, like, obviously the off the tee stuff not as good, but like the approach is always spectacular for Webb. So I get that for sure.
He's getting healthier. The results are trending up.
Yeah,
I almost made him a player love over Sam Burns. I wonder what Rom, Burns, and Webb would get me. 88 for 3 golfers. That's not going to cut it.
No. Robin Burns works out well, though. I'll say that. Staring at one right now that I don't mind. Which lower salary golfers have odds stand out to you? A place I will have to be if I want to do the Rom Burns lineup because Rom is very high salaried.
So the way I usually do this is golfers with a salary of 9,000 or lower, and then there were like 5 who were shorter than 120, and then there were 23 at 120 to 1. So I was like, let me just check and see what pops if I up this to 95 or below, which I think is also relevant for what we're talking about. Max Homa then 65 to 1, Ricky Fowler, Keith Mitchell 70 to 1, Francesco Molinari, Kevin Kisner, Pat Perez, Matt Kuchar, Andrew Putnam, Aaron Wise, all 80 to 1. Joel Damon, Gary Woodland, Brandon Grace 90, and then Siwoo Kim, Keegan Bradley, Cameron Davis, and Lucas Herbert 100 to 1. I honestly don't dislike many of those names. I'm not going to be interested in Molinari, Kisner, or Kuchar. I can say that for sure. But this is another reason why I think like Rom and then Burns or Webb, and then you just linger around that 9,000 mark and you don't have to dip below it. You can still build a really strong lineup.
You can dip below with Aaron Wise and
You
then
can, yes.
not dip below it again.
He's on the list.
He better be.
Well, I mentioned 80. He moved from 100 to 80, so that's got to be promising.
It's not the only thing that moved. Think about Aaron Wise.
Weather for this week. The afternoon waves both days will have a smidge bit less wind to deal with. That's more noteworthy for like single round slates. You're playing like a Thursday only or a Friday only. The full slate will cancel that out there. Plus, It is not going to be more than 8 miles per hour either day. So nothing too crazy for wind. There'll be a bit more wind Saturday, but nothing to the point where we need to factor in wind splits or anything. We should be good to go. So with that said, let's dive into our player picks here for the Waste Management Phoenix Open. Brandon at the top end, who are the studs you are looking at for this week on FanDuel?
John Rahm. I mean,
I need a full pitch. You got to convince me on John Rahm.
He's the best value in the field adjusted for salary according to my combo model. I mean,
I love it.
It's a good model.
Not wrong.
Right?
It's not wrong.
Arizona State roots, plays well here. Like, I just, again, there's, as someone who's really like, I put game theory first to the point that I do a lot of dumb stuff.
Yeah.
I don't really see it with Rahm. Like, this is not a weak field, and I think a couple years ago we had like Brendan Steele as like a de facto $12,000 golfer, and it's like this is not the same thing as having John Rahm. So I'm gonna play Rahm, lock him into our head-to-head every time he's in the field until he starts falling off. He's going to be in there, so that's where I am with Rahm.
Yeah, Rahm is the second guy put in from a head-to-head. Again, Aaron Wise first. Got to get the top studs in there first. Secondary studs second. But it's just so hard to get off him, even, with the high roster rates being what they are, because he leads the field off the tee. He leads the field in birdies or better game the past 50 rounds. He's 10th in approach. He has, if you look at Bermuda splits, which again, you're not because of the way that they play. If you look at that, he has the best marks from Bermuda among the guys of 11.5 or higher. Overall putting marks, very good for John Rahm. Finishes great. Finishes here have been great. For a cash game, yes. Overweight in tournaments. Let's move on. Who else do you like in this upper range?
Well, I have Sam Burns.
Keep him.
Okay. Great ball striking. Long off the tee. Again, like a Bermuda specialist, which I'm not really factoring in for this week. The main question mark for Burns, and I don't want to gloss over this, is he hasn't played this course very well. He's in a lot better form now than he used to be, but if he can't quite figure out TPC Scottsdale, we could end up being proven wrong on Burns, but I think that's really the only thing standing in his way. Missed his first two cuts here, and then was 22nd last year, but he gained 10.9 strokes from putting.
Sustainable.
So
that is 1.2 on approach. So he wasn't like a disaster. He was close to a disaster, but like
lost off the tee, lost with the wedges, but gained the 1.2 with the approach.
That's all that matters.
So I mean, realistically, we could be looking at like missed cut, 58th or something like that from Burns here. Yeah. And that is why it was close enough for me kind of to have a coin flip conversation between Burns and Webb Simpson here. So
yeah,
I'm leaning Burns, but I think Webb is very much in play as well.
Other point against Burns is that he has not been, he's also my player pick here. He has not been great in two events since January 1st, but not a disaster. So I think that's why I'm not caring too much. He's 18th in strokes gained off the tee, 28th in approach, 11th in birdies or better gained. As a good on Bermuda, but also good overall from a putting perspective. When he missed the cut of the Farmers, he actually did gain 1.3 out the tee and 0.1 around the green across his one measured round. Just lost an approach. I'm betting on that snapping back eventually. Just seems like he is a great way to be a bit more balanced after Rahm with my second golfer. And I'd rank him above. So in this range, we've got Webb at 10-7. Webb's fine. Louis Westhazen, I actually don't mind either at 10-6. But like, I just think that Burns is better than those guys. I'm not opposed to Webb or Westhazen, but I just think that I prefer Burns. There are points against him. So like if you get the vibe that Burns will be very popular, sure, pivot to Webb. That's totally fine. He's not as much of a firm guy as we are with Rob, but I think outside of that, I'm going to have a hard time talking myself out of him.
Sam Burns, not as firm as John Rahm is what I'm hearing.
Kind of weird. Couple of accidental or purposeful innuendos. Anyway, mid-salaried options. Who else do you like there? Or who do you like there, I should say?
I got Russell Henley knocking on the door of the 10,000 range, but he's second best in adjusted iron play over the past year. with my adjustments. 40th percentile putting's not anything to get worried about, especially if these greens do play as easy as they typically can. Has 4 straight top 25s, was runner-up in Hawaii, is finished top 25 in 6 of 7 starts to kick off this 2021-2022 PGA Tour season.
Henley's great. Ball striking's amazing. Putting not as big of a concern. I think he makes a lot of sense. I would just rather save 300, go down to Luke List. But I do think the Henley is interesting. Let's say hypothetically,
Yes.
not staring down a lineup right now. You have 97 left. List is already in there. Do you go to Tom Hoagie or do you reconfigure to get it to Russell Henley?
I reconfigure unless I have to go below 88, I think.
Okay. I would. So, okay.
You would reconfigure?
Just again, hypothetically. No, I would have to go below 88. So, hypothetical, not my bobble hat lineup against you, just asking hypothetically.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
just
Look.
curious.
I'm not going to sit here and say, like, absolutely, I think that anyone who plays anyone below 8,800 this week is doing it wrong, because some of those guys are going to have good weeks. It's I think that's the line of demarcation, if I'm using that phrase correctly, where things bottom out too much for me. I don't see a whole lot of win upside there, win juice, which is what we need. You don't want to play anyone who you think realistically can't win. So I think that Aaron Wise could win. I think Keith Mitchell could win at 88. So that is really where I'm kind of stopping myself. And I know it can feel like, hey, if this guy finishes like 10th, like that's fine. But I want to make sure that I think all of my guys can win.
Speaking of win juice, let's
Yes.
talk about Luke List. My
Yes.
first mid-range play, because I'm not jumping off now. Despite the fact we could have just cashed out our Luke List love and been good, we're still on here, baby. He's 18th in Data Golf's true strokes gained data over the past 6 months, 26th in salary over at FanDuel. And the Data Golf number does account for the fact that he's a bad putter. He's at negative 0.56 strokes gained per round putting in that time. Not great. He's still Luke List, but the same is true for his birdies are better number. He ranks 4th in the field there. Basically, you got to hope he just doesn't give it all back on the greens. Even at the Houston Open back in the fall, he lost 5.8 strokes putting and still finished 11th. That's how good the ball striking has been. So I'll give it a swipe once again with the salary at $9,600. I have no reason to stop. Looks like he's your second mid-range guy too, right?
Yes.
Sticking with it? Like it.
Yeah. He won the Farmers with his tee to green play. He's been finishing well with his tee to green play. He probably won't gain more than 2 strokes putting this week. That's probably like his soft cap, I would kind of say. But that's enough. And I know that I'm talking about I need people who can win. He can win. He just showed that with a pretty solid putting performance. His tee to green game is so consistently good that all it takes is non-terrible putting, which is asking a lot from List.
Yeah.
But again, the data shows that these are easy greens to putt on. And again, List has been good at this event. 30th, 25th, cut 26th over his past 4. 3 missed cuts before that, but I think it's fair to adjust for like Luke List being what he is now than what he was then.
Yeah, I think so too. So Luke List to me, just really hard to pass up. My second mid-salary guy is Joel Damon. We've talked about him a couple times in passing. Here's why. We know his limitations as a putter as well, but hey, care a little bit less about that this week. Despite the putting, he's still 19th in the field in birdies or better gained over the past 50 rounds. Gets there with the ball striking, 29th in strokes gained off the tee, 26th in approach. I can nitpick him if I want, but he's $9,200. I think that is pretty attractive. So I am very in on Joel Damon once again. What are your thoughts on Damon here at $9,200?
Love him. He's an other to consider for me. He realistically is more likely to be in my lineups than even Russell Henley, who I listed, but that comes down to salary, not preference. I think Henley's a fantastic play. I think he's undersalaried. He should be considered in like the low 10,000 range, but he's not. For me with Damon, it's a very similar case with List. Good ball striking. The tee to greens there, just the putting, you never know. And while we're at it, if we're going to talk about golfers of that archetype in this salary range, I'll throw out that I am somewhat into Keegan Bradley at 91.
I was curious who you were going to say there, and it made me very nervous you said Keegan.
Why?
I'll let you have that one. I know it's the right archetype, but I'm just a little nervous, a little uncomfy. You can have him. You can have him.
He's played here a ton.
What?
He's played here a ton.
Sure.
Doesn't really putt that poorly.
You can have him. That's fine. Who do you like in the lower salary range for this week?
I have Gary Woodland first. Plenty of history here, including that win in 2018. And again, it's banking on the form to continue trending up. He's got good iron play at this course. He's got good iron play recently. He's been very average over the past 6 months, but that's different than being bad. And if you give me average with potential of ball striking at a course where he's done well, that's the kind of recipe I'm looking for.
Yeah, with Woodland being average, you can bank on that improving based on his long-term track record, based on his history at this course. I think that makes a lot of sense. So I do like Woodland at 9,000, not opposed to using him. My top value is Aaron Wise, coming up miscut of the Farmers, but nothing concerning. He was fine there. This is a guy who's definitely going to get some birdies, which I love for this week. You know, shocker. You won't waste score points in fantasy. Even with the bad putting for Wise, he's still third in birdies or better game the past 50 rounds. 29th off the tee, 39th in approach. Plus the putting has been a bit better recently. He's gained in 4 straight events. He's gained in 6 of the past 8. I don't necessarily expect that to continue, but hey, it's not a bad thing by any means. He likely still has like the collapses, like the really, really bad, like you mentioned last year at this event. Those events are still there, but decreasing the odds that they occur is pretty huge for a guy at $8,800. So that's why I like Wise. What do you like about him?
So missed the cut at the Farmers in his first event back. I liked him then. I bet him to win, which might have been a little bit overconfident, but we know what Aaron Wise is over the past. Like we know what Aaron Wise can do for us. He's got upside, and over the past year, he leads all golfers with a salary of 9,000 or below in long-term form, according to my data. You gotta like that. Again, we can talk about the very specific stats that matter, but if you get like very good long-term form relative to your salary at a certain point, I think you just got to kind of trust that, because these golfers are not necessarily thinking, well, one of the key stats is like par 5 scoring, and my par 5 scoring is just kind of okay. I'm not gonna have a shot. If they're good golfers, they're good golfers in almost any situation. Like you said, we're just really tweaking things from there. So Aaron Wise, I think, is a great play. I also think Keith Mitchell fine at 88 as well.
Yeah. My second low salary guy is Troy Merritt. Talked about him before. We're talking about McCarthy. Merritt's big bugaboo is his chipping, and I'm fine de-emphasizing that this week, which puts me on him here at $8,600. Merritt does most stuff well. He's not great anywhere, but he's fine. 63rd off the tee, 56th in approach, 24th in all-around putting, 36th in birdies or better gains, even with the chipping trouble. So Merritt's coming out 4th at Pebble Beach. May catch some odds this week as a result of that, but I wouldn't expect anything too crazy. So I like Merritt at 86. What is your read on him, Brandon?
Sorry, I had fansharesports.com pulled up and he's not popping.
But is anyone of concern popping?
Well, one thing is noteworthy, at least. John Rahm does not have the most tags. He is tied for second with Hideki and Sam Burns and Corey Connors, which all makes sense.
Okay.
But Scotty Scheffler is out first.
Is he lower salaried on a different site that shall not be named?
Percentage of the cap wise is actually a little bit pricier on FanDuel.
Interesting.
So now on some, yeah. So I don't think you're going to get necessarily the leverage with Scheffler this week that you might have been seeking.
Okay, that's fine. I'm okay going elsewhere, and that is totally okay by me. Let's finish up here with our win picks for this week. We are picking 2 guys we like based on their win odds over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Brandon, I call dibs on Sam Burns. He's 34. You can have him as well if you want, but he's one of mine. Who are you looking at for this week?
I kind of think that John Rahm's a fair bet at plus 750, but I'm not going to do that myself. I'm Oh, Sam Burns is 34 now.
Yeah.
I like that. That's an extra point.
Yeah.
I'm going Burns. I mean, I'm not going to go away from that. I think it's
fine.
It's not as fun, but I'm doing it. And then I'm going to go Corey Connors as well.
Okay, Corey Connors right now is 41-1. And again, as you mentioned, Sam Burns is 34-1. Oh, my second golfer.
I feel like it's just going to be Hideki.
Me?
No. I feel like Hideki's
going to win. Hideki's going to win. Okay. Man. So
it's a tough board because for me, whenever the favorite is pretty fairly valued, it's not like, oh, John Rahm's 4-1, so that's taking a lot, and we're getting a lot of extra value on like these other names. We're not getting that this week.
The big issue I'm having, there are two issues. A, I hate betting long shots. I hate it.
Mm-hmm.
Two, if we'd recorded yesterday, I could have gotten this guy a better number, and I'm no longer getting that number. It's an issue. I'm tempted to go Aaron Wise at 80-1. Tempted.
What if I give you 90-1? What if I split the difference? Give you 90-1 for this?
No. You're trying to bait me into this. Don't do that. I see right through you. Okay. So I'm not doing that because you talked me out of it now because you tried to get me to take him.
Because I try to be nice.
Yeah, I'm not going to fall for your web of deceit. No. Man, this is tough. There's no one other than Sam Burns that I like.
Yeah, I know, right?
So, like, honestly, this is also similar discussions I had with Burns, as I could have gotten a better number yesterday, but give me Patrick Cantlay at 14-1. Let's do it.
All right.
So I have Cantlay at 14-1, Burns at 34-1. You have Burns at 34-1, Connors at 41-1. If Aaron Wise wins, I'm going to beat myself up for a very long time. Sorry, when Aaron Wise wins, I'll beat myself up for a very long time. But I think from a process perspective, Cantlay's the better option.
Would you rather, because you went shorter, would you rather I go Hideki instead of Connors?
No.
Okay.
You like Connors more relative to the odds. You should take Connors.
All right.
Yeah. I just think that Cantlay, if I'm not going with Wise, I think Cantlay, like from a value perspective, is the second best value on the board. So I'll go there. Okay. That is all that we have here for today for the podcast. Brandon, any final thoughts for you on the Waste Management Phoenix Open before we close up shop for today?
I think we covered a lot of it. Talked roster construction, talked about the importance of course history. I think we're good.
I think we are as well. Again, we're back with you later on this week, Thursday, 10 a.m. on the FanDuel YouTube page and up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed after that to get you set for Super Bowl 56 from a DFS perspective. Also, betting streams live for you Wednesday at 6 p.m. and Friday at 4 p.m. to have all of your needs covered for Rams versus Bengals coming up on Sunday. Also, make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter, where can they find you there?
I'm at Gadula13, GDULA13.
I saw the coffee cup come up, and I knew I had to nip it in the bud just for funsies. This is a cool coffee cup, by the way. What is that?
It's an owl.
Did you make? Oh, okay. It looked like pottery that you may have made.
No.
The owl's cute.
I got it from my wife.
My wife. I got this because I had an employee discount at the Hard Rock Cafe in San Diego. So same origin story, you know. I didn't work there, but I knew someone who worked there. So that's great backstory behind my cup. Anyway, that's all we have for today for the Waste Management Phoenix Open. Enjoy the event. We'll talk to you once again Thursday to get you set for the Super Bowl. But until then, have a fantastic time. We'll talk to you once again soon. This has been Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire.